My fiancé refused to sign a prenup because it's not romantic, until I found out about his 3 maxed out credit cards. We'd been together for 2 years when Trevor proposed at my parents' anniversary dinner. Everyone cried. My mom immediately started planning the wedding. Dad pulled me aside that night and suggested a prenup. You make good money, sweetheart, just protect yourself. Trevor laughed when I brought it up. Babe, that's so cynical. We're going to be married. What's mine is yours. The way he said it made me feel guilty for even asking. Fast forward 3 months. I was looking for stamps in his desk when I found the letters. Not love letters, collection notices, 3 credit cards all maxed out, total debt, $47,000. I sat there staring at the numbers, my hands shaking. We were closing on our house in 6 weeks. Trevor walked in and froze. I can explain, he started. But I was already doing the math, the romantic weekend trips, the designer watch he claimed was a bonus from work, the expensive wine at dinner parties, all debt. When were you going to tell me? I asked. He had the nerve to look hurt. I was handling it. I didn't want you to worry. Handling it meant making minimum payments while the interest compounded. I pulled our joint account statements. He'd been transferring money from our wedding fund to cover his payments. $8,300 gone. Money my aunt had gifted us. Money from my own savings. It's our money, he said. We're getting married. That night, I called my dad. He was quiet for a long time. Cancel the house closing, he finally said, and get your name off anything joint. By morning, I'd frozen our shared accounts and moved my half to a new bank. Trevor came home to find his cards declined at the gas station. He called me 17 times. I didn't answer until he showed up at my office. You're overreacting, he insisted. Couples work through financial issues together. Couples who are honest do, I said. Couples who don't steal from joint accounts. He tried a different approach then. Tears, promises to get counseling, claims his ex-wife had ruined his credit and he was still recovering. But I'd done my research. His credit report showed the cards were opened after we met. Every purchase was voluntary. The house was supposed to close in 2 weeks. I called the realtor and explained I needed to remove myself from the contract. Trevor could buy it solo if he qualified. Spoiler, he didn't. The wedding was in 3 months. I started making calls. My mom begged me to reconsider. All couples have money fights, she said. Don't throw away 2 years over credit cards. But this wasn't about credit cards. It was about the lying, the manipulation, the way he'd made me feel selfish for wanting to protect myself while he was draining our accounts. I moved my stuff out while he was at work, left the ring on the counter with a note. What's mine is mine. What's yours is $47,000 in debt. I crashed at my sister's apartment that week, screening calls from Trevor and his mother. She left a voicemail calling me heartless, said her son was devastated, that I destroyed him over money. Then my sister got a weird Instagram message. A woman named Delilah. Is your sister really marrying Trevor Harrison? Because he owes me $12,000 and hasn't made a payment in 8 months. Turns out Trevor had borrowed money from his ex 2 years ago, right before he met me. She'd been trying to reach him for months. I called her that night. We compared notes, the lies, the financial manipulation, the way he'd cry and make promises he never kept. There's something else, Delilah said carefully. Before we broke up, he kept asking about my grandmother's inheritance. Got really angry when I said it was in a trust. My stomach dropped. My grandmother had just died, left me everything. The reading of the will was scheduled for next week, and I couldn't fit what happens next in this short video. Watch the rest down below. The call with Delilah lasted 3 hours. She'd met Trevor through a dating app, same as me. He'd been charming at first, thoughtful, always remembered the little things. But 6 months in, the questions started. How much was her rent? What did her parents do? Did she have any savings? I thought he was just being interested in my life, Delilah explained. Looking back, he was calculating my net worth. When her grandmother passed, Trevor suddenly became the perfect boyfriend. Brought flowers, cooked dinner, talked about their future together. Then came the casual questions about the inheritance. How much was it? When would she get it? What did she plan to do with it? He suggested we invest it together, Delilah said. Open a joint brokerage account. Said he had this amazing financial advisor. She'd almost done it. Almost signed the papers. Then her cousin, who worked in banking, ran Trevor's information, found the debt, the judgments, the pattern of dating women with money. I confronted him and he cried. Delilah continued, said he had a gambling problem, that he'd hit rock bottom and needed help. I was young and stupid. I gave him $12,000 for rehab. Did he go? I asked, though I already knew. He went to Vegas, posted pictures on Instagram with his friends. When I demanded the money back, he ghosted me, changed his number, blocked me everywhere. I found out later he'd moved to a new city, to my city, where he'd found me. I hung up and immediately called my dad's attorney. I need you to look into something, I said. By the next morning, he'd compiled a report. Trevor had a pattern spanning 7 years, 4 serious relationships. Each woman had either family money, a high-paying job, or an inheritance. He'd dated a nurse practitioner for 18 months, convinced her to co-sign a car loan, then disappeared. He'd lived with a software engineer for 2 years, racked up $30,000 on her credit cards, then claimed he was leaving to find himself. The pattern was always the same. Charm, love bombing, moving fast. Then the financial entanglement, joint accounts, shared bills, borrowed money, and when the women caught on or the well ran dry, he'd vanish and start over somewhere new. My grandmother's will was being read on Thursday. The estate was valued at $1.2 million. Trevor knew this. We'd talked about it. I'd mentioned the family property in Vermont, the investment accounts, the antique jewelry collection. I'd told him everything because I thought we were building a life together. That's when I realized something. Trevor had proposed exactly 2 weeks after my grandmother's diagnosis. Terminal cancer. 6 months to live. He'd been so supportive during that time. Drove me to the hospital. Held my hand during the final days. Helped plan the funeral. I'd thought he was being the partner I needed. But he'd been waiting, calculating, planning his payday. My sister found more of his victims through social media. A dental hygienist in Ohio. A paralegal in Michigan. A teacher in Pennsylvania. 8 women in 7 years. Combined, he owed them over $150,000. We started a group chat. They called it the Trevor Harrison Recovery Fund. He told me his mother was sick and needed surgery, the dental hygienist wrote. $18,000 gone. He said he was starting a business. The paralegal added. Convinced me to invest $25,000. The business never existed. The teacher had the worst story. He proposed after 4 months. I thought I'd found my soulmate. We had a joint account for wedding expenses. He cleaned it out the day before we were supposed to go to the courthouse. $32,000. I found out later he'd been seeing someone else the entire time. I spent the next 3 days documenting everything. Bank statements, text messages, emails. The attorney said we had a strong case for fraud, but it would be expensive to pursue. These things rarely end in recovery, he warned. Even if you win, you can't get blood from a stone. But I wasn't doing this for the money. I was doing this to stop him. The will reading was at 2 p.m. on Thursday. I changed all my passwords, secured my accounts, and put fraud alerts on my credit. Trevor didn't know I knew about Delilah. He'd been calling from different numbers, leaving messages that oscillated between apologetic and aggressive. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. You're ruining my life over nothing. I love you, please just talk to me. My dad insisted on coming to the attorney's office with me. My sister too. We arrived 15 minutes early. The attorney, Mr. Patterson, was a friend of my grandmother's. He'd handled her affairs for 30 years. Before we begin, he said carefully, I need to inform you that someone has been making inquiries about your grandmother's estate. A man claiming to be your fiancé contacted our office last week asking about the distribution timeline. My blood went cold. What did you tell him? Nothing. Client confidentiality. But he was persistent. Called 4 times. Mr. Patterson slid a piece of paper across the desk. He left this number. It was Trevor's number, the one he'd been calling me from. There's something else, Mr. Patterson continued. Your grandmother updated her will 3 weeks before she passed. She called me from the hospital and insisted on adding a specific clause. He opened the file and read, in the event that my granddaughter is engaged or married at the time of my death, a thorough financial background check must be conducted on her partner before any assets are transferred. If the partner is found to have undisclosed debts exceeding $10,000 or a history of financial fraud, the engagement or marriage must be legally dissolved before the inheritance can be claimed. I stared at him. She knew. She suspected. Mr. Patterson said gently, your grandmother was a sharp woman. She mentioned that your fiancé asked her several questions about the estate during her final weeks. Made her uncomfortable. She wanted to protect you. My sister grabbed my hand. My dad's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles jumping. The good news, Mr. Patterson continued, is that you've already ended the relationship. The background check is complete. Trevor Harrison has $59,000 in outstanding debts and at least 8 documented cases of financial fraud against former partners. The inheritance is yours, free and clear. He slid the documents across the desk. Property deeds, investment accounts, safety deposit box keys. My grandmother had left me everything. But more importantly, she'd left me a way out. That night, I called Trevor from a burner phone. We need to meet, I said. There are some things we need to discuss about the house. He agreed immediately. Suggested a coffee shop near his apartment. I countered with a police station parking lot. Public, safe, cameras everywhere. He showed up 20 minutes late, driving a car I didn't recognize. Probably a rental after his lease got repossessed. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes. Wrinkled shirt. The designer watch was gone. Thank God you finally called, he started. I've been going crazy. We need to talk about us. There is no us, I said. I'm here to inform you that I'm filing a police report for fraud and theft. You stole $8,300 from our joint account. Money that was gifted specifically to me. His expression shifted. The mask dropped. You can't prove that. It was our money. You said so yourself. I have the bank statements. I have my aunt's check with my name on it. I have your transfers to your credit cards. I pulled out the folder. I also have statements from 8 other women you've defrauded. Delilah sends her regards, by the way. He went pale. I don't know what they told you, but they're lying. They're bitter exes trying to save it. I handed him a document. This is a cease and desist. You are not to contact me, my family, or any of the women in this group. If you do, we will pursue charges collectively. The combined theft exceeds $150,000. That's felony territory. You're bluffing, he said, but his hands were shaking. Try me. I stood up. One more thing. My grandmother left specific instructions in her will. She knew about you, knew what you were. She made sure you'd never see a penny of her money. The look on his face was worth every sleepless night. Pure rage mixed with desperation. That money should be ours. We were going to be married. No, we weren't. You were going to rob me and disappear, just like you did to everyone else. I turned to leave, then stopped. The paralegal in Michigan? She's pressing charges. You might want to get a lawyer. I didn't wait for his response. I got in my car and drove away, checking the rearview mirror to make sure he wasn't following. My sister had dinner waiting when I got home. We ate on her couch, watching terrible reality TV, not talking about Trevor or money or any of it, just being together. The next morning, I received an email from Trevor, A long, rambling message about how I'd misunderstood him, how he'd made mistakes but deserved a second chance, how I was throwing away real love because of money. I forwarded it to my attorney and blocked the address. The woman in Michigan, her name was Patricia, filed formal charges that afternoon. She had documentation of the $25,000 he'd stolen by claiming to start a business. She'd hired a private investigator who'd tracked down the money. Trevor had spent it on a trip to Cancun with another woman he'd been seeing simultaneously. The other woman had no idea he had a girlfriend. She'd also given him money. The police investigation expanded quickly. Once one woman came forward, others followed. The dental hygienist, the teacher, a real estate agent from Florida I hadn't even known about. She'd lost $40,000 in what he'd called an investment opportunity. By the end of the week, Trevor was facing 7 counts of fraud across 3 states. The prosecutors were building a case that would take months, maybe years. But it was happening. My grandmother's estate settled without complications. The Vermont property was beautiful, a farmhouse on 40 acres that she'd bought in 1970. The investment accounts had grown steadily. The jewelry collection was appraised at $80,000. And there was a handwritten letter addressed to me, dated 3 days before she died. "My darling girl," it began. "If you're reading this, then I'm gone and you're inheriting the life I built. I want you to know something important. I almost married a man like Trevor once. I was 19, and he was charming and handsome and made me feel like the most important person in the world. Then my father died and left me a small inheritance. Suddenly, my fiancé had opinions about how I should spend it. He had business ideas that required investment. He had debts that needed paying. I was young enough to almost fall for it. But my mother saw through him. She did what I'm doing for you now. She made sure I couldn't access my inheritance until I'd ended the engagement. I was furious with her, thought she was controlling and cruel. It took me 2 years to understand she'd saved my life. The man I eventually married, your grandfather, never asked about money, never calculated my worth. He loved me when I had nothing, and would have loved me just the same if I'd inherited millions. That's how you know it's real. Don't settle for less than you deserve. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting yourself. The right person will never ask you to choose between love and safety. Protect your heart, but protect your future too. I love you more than all the money in all the world." I sat in that attorney's office and cried reading her words. My grandmother had been gone for 3 weeks, but she was still protecting me. The investigation into Trevor uncovered even more. He'd been running this con for almost a decade. There were women we hadn't found, bank accounts under different names. He'd been married twice, both times to women with money, and both marriages had ended with mysterious disappearances and drained accounts. One ex-wife had died in a car accident 2 years after their divorce. The insurance money had gone to him as the beneficiary. The police were looking into it. My dad hired a forensic accountant to trace Trevor's movements. The report was 200 pages long. Trevor wasn't even his real name. He'd been born Gregory Thompson in Iowa, dropped out of college after 1 semester, and started his first con at 22. He'd stolen money from a girlfriend's college fund. When her parents threatened to press charges, he'd moved states and changed his name. He'd been Trevor Harrison for 6 years. Before that, he'd been Grant Henderson. Before that, Thomas Green. Each identity came with a new background story, a new tragic past, new reasons why he needed money now, but would pay it back later. The web of lies was so extensive that prosecutors had trouble keeping track. They found 13 victims willing to testify. Combined losses exceeded $280,000. The median age of his victims was 29. He targeted women who were financially independent but emotionally vulnerable. Women who just lost someone. Women who just started making good money. Women who wanted to believe in love. I testified at a preliminary hearing 2 months later. Trevor, or Gregory, or Grant, or whatever his real name was, sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit. He'd been denied bail after the police discovered he had a passport under another name and a one-way ticket to the Philippines. The prosecutor asked me to describe the relationship. I kept it factual. The timeline, the proposal, the lies about debt, the money he'd stolen. I didn't mention the heartbreak. Didn't talk about how I'd almost married him, how I'd imagined our kids and our life together, how I'd believed every lie. His attorney tried to paint me as vindictive. "Isn't it true you were angry about the breakup?" she asked. "Isn't it true you encouraged these other women to come forward to hurt Mr. Harrison?" "No," I said simply. "I warned them because he was already targeting new victims. We found his dating profiles. He had dates scheduled with 3 women next week. One of them was a widow who'd just gotten her husband's life insurance." The judge called a recess. In the hallway, I met a woman named Beverly. She was 63, had lost her husband to cancer 8 months ago, and had matched with Trevor on a dating app aimed at mature singles. They'd been talking for 2 weeks. He'd seemed perfect, understanding, patient. He told her he was a financial advisor. "He sent me flowers yesterday," Beverly said, showing me her phone. "He wanted to meet for dinner tomorrow. I almost went." "But you didn't," I said. "I Googled him first, found the news stories about the arrest, found your name mentioned as one of the victims." She grabbed my hands. "You saved my life savings, my husband's life insurance, everything. I was going to tell him about it over dinner. He seemed so trustworthy." I hugged her right there in the courthouse hallway. She cried. I cried. The prosecutor stepped outside and saw us, then quietly added Beverly to the list of intended victims for the pattern evidence. The trial took 8 weeks. 13 women testified. Each one told a similar story. The charm, the lies, the manipulation, the theft. Some had lost their savings. One had lost her house. Another had her credit destroyed so badly she couldn't get an apartment. The defense tried to claim it was all misunderstandings. relationship disputes. He said, she said. But the forensic accountant had traced every dollar. The money didn't lie. It showed a clear pattern of targeting, extracting, and abandoning. Trevor, I still couldn't think of him as Gregory, didn't testify. His attorney advised against it. But I watched him during the trial. Sometimes he'd look at his victims with something like remorse. Other times, the mask would slip and I'd see the calculation underneath. He was already planning his next move, figuring out how to work the system, who to charm, how to minimize his sentence. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Fraud, theft, identity theft, money laundering. The judge scheduled sentencing for 30 days later. My sister and I went out for drinks that night. We sat in a quiet bar, not celebrating exactly, but acknowledging that something had ended. A chapter had closed. Do you regret it? She asked. The time you spent with him? I thought about it. I regret the lies. I regret the money. But I don't regret leaving. I don't regret fighting back. I don't regret helping the other women. Grandma would be proud, she said. The sentencing hearing was packed. All 13 victims showed up. The prosecutor asked for the maximum, 15 years. The defense asked for leniency, claiming Trevor had a troubled childhood and mental health issues. The judge read through each victim's statement. Then he looked at Trevor. Mr. Thompson, he began, using his real name. You have systematically destroyed the financial security and emotional well-being of at least 13 women over the past decade. You have shown no remorse, no accountability, and no indication that you would stop this behavior if given the opportunity. This court sentences you to 12 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. You will also be required to pay restitution to your victims in the amount of $280,000 plus interest. Trevor's face went blank. His attorney whispered something to him. He nodded mechanically. Guards came to take him away. He glanced back once at the courtroom, scanning the faces of the women he'd destroyed. When his eyes met mine, I didn't look away. I wanted him to see that I wasn't broken, that none of us were. Outside the courthouse, the 13 of us stood together. The prosecutor had warned us that restitution would be difficult. Trevor had no assets, no legitimate income. We'd likely never see that money. I don't care about the money anymore, Patricia said. I care that he can't hurt anyone else for 12 years. We exchanged contact information. Some of us stayed in touch. Patricia and I became actual friends. She lived 2 hours away and we'd meet for lunch sometimes. We never talked about Trevor. We talked about our jobs, our families, our lives moving forward. Delilah sent me a message 6 months later. She'd met someone new, an accountant who'd shown her his credit report on their 3rd date without being asked. He thought it was weird that I wanted to see it so early, she wrote. But when I explained, he understood. We're taking things slow. I sold the Vermont farmhouse for $450,000, kept the investment accounts, donated half the jewelry to a women's shelter. The rest I put in a trust with very specific instructions. No one could access it without a thorough background check. No partners, no spouses, just me. I bought a small house in my city, 2 bedrooms, a nice kitchen, a garden where I could grow vegetables like my grandmother used to. My sister moved into the 2nd bedroom. We split the bills evenly, kept our finances completely separate, and built a life that felt safe. I went to therapy, lots of therapy, processed the betrayal, the lies, the fact that I'd almost married a con artist. My therapist helped me understand that I wasn't stupid or naive. Trevor was a professional. This was what he did. He'd spent years perfecting his technique. I couldn't have known. None of us could have. But we could know now. We could be smarter. We could warn others. I started speaking at financial literacy workshops for young women. I'd tell my story, then break down the warning signs. Love bombing, moving too fast, vague about their past, secretive about money, lots of sob stories, always needing help. I'd watch the women in the audience nodding, recognizing patterns in their own relationships. After one workshop, a college student approached me. My boyfriend just asked me to co-sign a car loan, she said. We've only been dating 4 months. I felt guilty for hesitating, but something felt off. Trust that feeling, I told her. If someone really loves you, they'll understand you need to protect yourself. She broke up with him that week. Found out later he'd done the same thing to 3 other girlfriends at different colleges. All of them had said yes. All of them were stuck with his debt. My dad sent me a text on the anniversary of Trevor's sentencing. Proud of you. Just 3 words. It meant everything. Mom took longer to come around. She'd been so invested in the wedding, the perfect son-in-law, the grandkids she'd been planning. But eventually she admitted that something had always bothered her about Trevor. He was too perfect, she said. Too smooth. Your father earned my trust over years. Trevor demanded it in weeks. I dated occasionally. Nothing serious. I'd been burned too badly to rush into anything. My therapist said I was being smart, self-protective, that I'd know when I was ready. A year after the sentencing, I got a letter from Trevor. It had been opened and read by prison officials first. He'd written 17 pages. Most of it was excuses, explanations. He claimed he'd never meant to hurt anyone, that he'd been addicted to the thrill, that he was getting help in prison, that he'd found God. The last paragraph said, I know you probably hate me. I know I destroyed what we had, but I want you to know that what I felt for you was real. I did love you. I just loved money more. I read it once, then burned it in the fireplace. My sister watched the pages curl and blacken. Any regrets? She asked. Not even one, I said. Trevor's mother tried to contact me twice. The first time she called my office, crying about how her son's life was ruined, how I'd destroyed him over a misunderstanding. I hung up. The second time, she showed up at my house. My sister called the police. An officer explained the restraining order to her. She left, but not before shouting that I was a gold digger who'd never really loved her son. The irony wasn't lost on me. 2 years after the trial, Patricia called with news. Trevor was up for early release. Good behavior, overcrowding. The parole board was reviewing his case. We mobilized immediately. All 13 victims wrote letters to the parole board, detailed our experiences, explained why he was still dangerous. The prosecutor attended the hearing on our behalf. Trevor looked different. Prison had aged him, gray hair at his temples, thinner. He'd grown a beard. He spoke to the parole board about his transformation, his therapy, his remorse, his plans to rebuild his life. The board asked if he'd paid any restitution. He admitted he hadn't, couldn't work in prison, had no way to earn money, planned to get a job immediately upon release and start making payments. They asked about his victims. He said he thought about us every day, that he was deeply sorry, that he'd changed. The board denied his parole, cited the severity of his crimes, the number of victims, the lack of restitution, the psychological damage. He'd serve his full sentence. Walking out of that hearing, I felt something release in my chest. He'd tried to charm them the way he'd charmed me, but this time, people saw through him. I met someone 3 years after Trevor's sentencing, a contractor named Ben who was renovating my neighbor's kitchen. He was quiet, a little awkward. He showed up on time and stayed late to finish work. When I mentioned I wanted to update my bathroom, he gave me an estimate that seemed reasonable and didn't ask for any money up front. "You pay when the job's done," he said, "and you're satisfied with the work." We started talking during his lunch breaks. He'd eat a sandwich on my porch while I worked in the garden. He told me about his daughter from a previous marriage, how he paid child support on time every month, how he'd bought a small house within his means, even though the bank had approved him for more. "I grew up poor," he explained. "My parents lost everything in a bad investment when I was 12. I saw what debt does to people. Never wanted that life." He didn't ask about my money, my job, my assets. He asked about my garden, my favorite books, what I did on weekends. When I mentioned my grandmother, he asked what she was like, not what she'd left me. We dated for a year before I told him about Trevor. We were sitting on my porch at dusk, and something about the quiet moment made me want to share. I told him everything, the lies, the debt, the trial, the 13 women. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I'm sorry you went through that. No one deserves to be treated like a mark." "You don't think I was stupid?" I asked, "for not seeing it?" "I think he was a professional liar, and you were someone who wanted to believe in love. That's not stupid. That's human." We got married 2 years later. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. Patricia came. So did Delilah. They'd both found their own happy endings. Before the wedding, I asked Ben if he'd be willing to sign a prenup. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I needed to feel safe. He agreed immediately. "Whatever makes you comfortable," he said. "I'm marrying you, not your bank account." My grandmother's letter is framed in my office now. I read it sometimes when I'm feeling uncertain, when I'm wondering if I'm too careful, too guarded, if I'm letting my past dictate my future. But then I remember Trevor sitting in that courtroom. I remember the 13 women who testified. I remember Beverly in the courthouse hallway crying because she'd almost lost everything. I protected myself. I protected others. I listened to the warning signs that my grandmother had taught me to recognize. That's not living in fear. That's living with wisdom. Trevor serves his time in a federal prison in Pennsylvania. He'll be released in 7 years with good behavior. I've already prepared for that day. Renewed restraining orders, updated security systems, made sure all 13 victims are informed and protected. He'll probably try again, find new victims, create a new identity. That's who he is. But at least 13 women are free. At least Beverly kept her husband's life insurance. At least future victims have our testimonies on record, searchable by anyone who thinks to Google his face. My sister got engaged last year. Her fiancé is a teacher who drives a 10-year-old Honda and splits rent with her 50-50. He insisted they both take a financial literacy course together before the wedding. He wanted to make sure they understood joint finances, debt management, and long-term planning. "He's so boring compared to Trevor," my mom said at the engagement party. "Good," I said. "Boring is safe. Boring is honest. Boring doesn't steal from your wedding fund." Mom actually laughed. She'd finally understood. I still do the workshops, still tell my story. Last month, a woman approached me afterward. She was crying. "My fiancé just asked me to add him to my grandmother's house deed," she said. "We've been together 8 months. I thought I was being paranoid for hesitating." I gave her the number for my attorney, told her to do a background check, told her that anyone who truly loves you will never make you choose between them and your security. She called 2 weeks later. Her fiancé had 2 bankruptcies and owed his ex-girlfriend $30,000. She'd ended it, kept her house, kept her future. These are the victories that matter. Not the money, not the revenge. The women who don't become victims because someone warned them first. My grandmother knew that. That's why she changed her will. That's why she made sure I couldn't access my inheritance until I was free of Trevor. She didn't want me to have money. She wanted me to have a life. And that's what I have now. A life I built carefully. A marriage based on trust. A home that's actually mine. A future that no one can steal. Sometimes I wonder what Trevor would think if he could see me now. If he'd feel remorse. If he'd understand what he threw away when he chose money over everything real. But mostly, I don't think about him at all. He's a chapter that ended. A lesson that taught me to value myself. A mistake that made me stronger. My grandmother was right. The right person will never ask you to choose between love and safety. They'll build both with you, brick by brick, honestly and openly, until you have something that can't be shaken by lies. That's what I have with Ben. That's what I'll teach my future kids. That's the inheritance my grandmother really left me. The knowledge that I deserve someone who values me for more than my bank account. And that's worth more than $1.2 million could ever be. 5 years after Trevor's sentencing, I received another letter from him. This one was different, shorter. 3 sentences. You were right about everything. I'm sorry I hurt you. I hope you're happy. I showed it to Ben. Do you think he means it? He asked. I don't know, I said honestly. But it doesn't matter anymore. I filed the letter with all the others. Evidence of a past life, proof of who I used to be and who I'd become. The really beautiful thing about healing is that eventually your scars become just another part of your story. They don't define you. They don't control you. They're just there, reminding you of what you survived. I survived Trevor. We all did. The 13 women who testified, the countless others he'd targeted. We picked up the pieces. We rebuilt. We learned to trust again without losing our wisdom. Patricia opened a financial consulting business specifically for women leaving bad relationships. Delilah went back to school for accounting. Beverly started a podcast about financial fraud targeting seniors. We turned our pain into purpose, our trauma into tools, our survival into strength. That's the real ending of this story. Not the trial, not the sentencing, not Trevor's apology. The real ending is 13 women living full, protected, honest lives. It's every workshop where someone recognizes the warning signs. Every woman who walks away before it's too late. Every life that doesn't get destroyed because we spoke up. My grandmother would be proud, not because I inherited her money, but because I inherited her wisdom, her strength, her refusal to let anyone diminish her worth. I carry that with me every day, in my work, in my marriage, in the choices I make. I am the granddaughter of a woman who almost fell for a con artist and instead built a fortune. I am the survivor of a man who tried to destroy me and failed. I am the woman who said no, who walked away, who fought back, who won, and I'm not done yet. There are more workshops to teach, more women to warn, more stories to share. Because Trevor isn't unique. Men like him exist everywhere. They're charming, they're patient, they're calculating, and they're counting on women being too embarrassed to speak up. But we're not embarrassed anymore. We're informed, we're vigilant, we're united, and we're making sure that the next generation of women knows the truth. Romance doesn't require you to surrender your safety. Love doesn't demand blind trust. The right partner will prove themselves worthy. They'll understand your caution. They'll respect your boundaries. They'll build trust through actions, not words. That's the lesson. That's the inheritance. That's the happy ending that matters. I'm married to a good man who signs prenups without hesitation, who maintains separate accounts because it makes me feel safe, who shows me his credit score and his bank statements without being asked, who understands that my caution isn't about him. It's about protecting what I've built. I live in a house that's completely mine, with savings that no one can touch, with a future that no one can steal. I sleep soundly at night knowing that every decision I make is mine alone, that no one is waiting to drain my accounts, that no one is calculating my worth. This is freedom. This is happiness. This is what my grandmother wanted for me all along. Trevor is still in prison. He'll be released eventually. He'll try to rebuild his life. Maybe he'll actually change. Maybe he won't. But it doesn't matter to me anymore. He's a footnote in my story. A cautionary tale I tell others. Not the main character. Not the villain. Just a person who tried to destroy me and failed. Because I am stronger than his lies. Smarter than his manipulations. More resilient than he ever imagined. I am my grandmother's granddaughter. And that means I know my worth. I protect my future. I choose my partners carefully. I trust my instincts. I don't apologize for being careful. And I live a life that's completely, beautifully, safely mine. That's how this story ends. Not with revenge, not with bitterness, not with fear, but with wisdom, with strength, with a future that no one can steal, with a love that's built on truth, with a life that's worth protecting, and with the knowledge that sometimes the best inheritance isn't money. It's the wisdom to know when to walk away, the courage to protect yourself, and the strength to help others do the same. My grandmother gave me all of that. And I'm passing it forward, one workshop at a time, one woman at a time, one saved future at a time. That's the real happy ending. That's the real victory. That's the real inheritance that matters.